Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. But before we begin, a quick reminder, you caught last week's episode, Play Noir is coming back. Film noir-styled one-act plays written from playwrights around the world. We'll be accepting submissions very soon. Actually, we've kind of gone live already. We'll be doing an official call for submissions very shortly. So in the meantime, if you happen to have a film noir-styled one-act play, be sure to send it on over to info@punkmonkeyproductions.com. While it is a few years out, I'm sure the guidelines are still at www.punkmonkeyproductions.com. And if you need a little guidance on what film noir and play noir entail, pick up a copy of Play Noir Anthology. And again, 41 film noir-style one-act plays written from playwrights from around the world. You can pick up a copy at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and even Walmart. My guest today is an award-winning, critically acclaimed writer. He has worked in various stages of development across film and theater in New York City, Los Angeles, London, Cape Town. He has worked with major theaters and broadcasters and is an associate artist in the Astrophysics Team at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. Two major plays coming up in 2025 include Giants, which explores the controversy that unfolded on the set of James Dean's last film, and Velocity, which examines mental health in the LGBTQ+ community and is set to open at the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. His current production, One Jewish Boy, opened March 22nd at the Echo Theater Company at the Atwater Village Theater in Los Angeles and runs through April 28. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stephen Laughton.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm really well.
Thanks for coming in.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Can I be the irritating person who tells you how to pronounce my name?
I knew it. And hang on, I got to throw myself under the bus real quick because I did this with Audrey Selafi, whose episode just dropped yesterday, and I said to myself, ask her how to pronounce her name before you do this, and I didn't do it. It's Laughlin, isn't? No, it isn't.
Lawton.
Lawton. See, there we go. That's what I get.
But I like that there's a laugh in it. I like that.
That's the most important part.
That's all that matters. Yeah. The other thing is I'm going to get into trouble because we're not supposed to say when about.
Why is it in your bio?
I told them to take it out.
I will go ahead and I can. As I said, we don't edit. I can edit that. That one's I will edit that out.
It's really funny.
I'm just getting in trouble. I feel like I should start this whole thing over again.
I know. I'm like telling you off over here. I'm like the mom, like your teacher.
That's great.
Hello. No,
I told
them to take it out. I was like, you shouldn't put that in there. I should have put it in there. I got in trouble because I was like, we haven't announced that yet. And then it was on the website, and I've been telling them to take it down. And last week I was like, you take that down, please. Like, I keep getting into trouble.
Let that be a lesson to everybody. Okay, so question for you.
Hello.
Tell me about the differences in markets from London, New York, Los Angeles, from somebody that started in London. I'm assuming that you were doing theater in London as well.
Yeah. That's where I started. It's a good question. And I don't know if I've got the answer because a lot of the time spent in New York, I was dealing with pandemic stage 1, pandemic stage 2, and then all of the strikes that kind of had this trickle-down effect, basically. So, and it's been really weird navigating a career as a playwright over the last decade, basically, because it was like London was wonderful and kind of really welcoming of me and my work. And I don't know, I'm kind of a weirdly different playwright. That makes me sound like an asshole. But it's just kind of like, I don't write like a lot of British writers, actually, is what I'm trying to say. And I remember when I met my very first agent, and we met at the Soho House in London, and she said to me, "Oh, you're British. I thought you were American. You write like an American," basically. And I think that's because I've always loved American drama, basically. So I kind of found this like little niche, if you like, in London, like this kind of fast-paced kind of, I don't know, Aaron Sorkin, David Mamet, Tony Kushner were like actually that's not entirely true. My idols when I was like really, really young were people like Pinter and Beckett and all of that theatre cruelty stuff, like kind of like really weird stuff. And then this is really long-winded. I essentially found like this little corner of London where I think a lot of the theatres initially and a lot of the literary managers were a little bit unsure about me because they were kind of like, he's kind of writing not completely weirdly but a little bit weirdly, and kind of his speed is different to a lot of other playwrights, and the stuff that he's writing about is a little bit different. And I've always had quite an ambitious outlook on what theatre can be, and so I think it was kind of like this weird spot, but audiences seem to really embrace it. And like I've been really lucky, like touch all the wood. Critics have always been really, really lovely about me as well. So it was just like this really weird thing where I was kind of being like welcomed by audiences, but theatre seemed a little bit like initially like, who is this guy, basically. And then my play started becoming successful and a little bit controversial. I've got into trouble a few times with different plays that I've written, and over nothing really, like really silly, and we'll get into all of that. And then so when things started going really, really well, and One Jewish Boy really blew up basically, and I always knew I wanted to move to America. So then when I was in New York, it was actually one of the I kind of almost at the pinnacle of my career, like because I'd had this play on in the West End, and then the pandemic happened, basically, and it was just like, oh no, like now what do I do? So then there was kind of like this year and a half in New York where nothing was really happening, but then I think that kind of weirdly took away a bunch of pressure, basically.
Sure.
And then I kind of wrote these two. Well, I wrote Velocity, which is like this mad play, but like I wrote like this little art kind of science play that suddenly did really, really well and was really welcoming, and then I wrote this kids play that was on every year for a little bit, and then I'm not answering this question very well at all. I'm just giving you a bio.
Okay, that's right. Because I've got questions out.
Yeah. And then I think what I'm saying is I haven't really noticed any difference, because everywhere, like I'm sitting here answering this question, and actually everywhere has just been really welcoming in a way. Do you know what I mean? Sure. And I've navigated it quite well, because I think I was always I've always felt like I've been a little bit outside the system. If that,
okay, sure.
Like, and I kind of haven't come up in the, because I didn't go straight into theatre from college, and I didn't study theatre initially, and so I worked in TV and film for the first 4 or 5 years of my career before I went back to school. So I'd come from this kind of completely different sensibilities. I think a lot of people, certainly in London, didn't know who I was at first, so I had to make my space, and then I guess I managed to bring that space to New York, but I still had to kind of make my space.
Sure.
And then I've come to LA and I'm like making my space again. But actually LA has been, when I think about how quickly it's taken to get my first production in a place, LA's been the quickest. I've been here less than a year,
Great. So the question I'll follow up in that in a way is like, but how hard is it? Like, does London have the same gatekeepers, or are they, or the gates thicker?
Okay.
And are there more locks on those gates?
I know how to answer this question now. London has a huge scene, right? And obviously a much bigger scene than LA. And I'd argue a much bigger scene than New York. And all of the interesting work is going on. You have like Broadway in New York, Broadway, off Broadway, and then like off Broadway, and that's actually about theatre size, right? Sure. In London, it's not about the size; it's more about the location and the gravitas of the theatres. And we have like West End, off West End, and Fringe, basically. Okay. But our Fringe is a really vibrant place, and what's really interesting about the Fringe is that you'll have writers who will be established going back to the Fringe when they want to do something interesting, basically, and you can find your people in a really nice way. So I think there's more opportunity in London to test and to fail and to go and do like a little one act version of your play and a short play night to test it out and find some people, and then you can develop it all, and then like you build your way up to the theatres, up to the bigger theatres. Sure. Essentially. And the other thing that I noticed in London that I haven't seen so much in America is you can make a living in development, basically. So you can be like developing stuff and be on commission, and that might never see the light of day, but you can still make a living and be like crafting and, you know, all of the I mean, one great thing that happened was when I came out of my master's course, I was really lucky and I got an agent like just off the bat, and what she did was she got me into all of the theatre groups. So it was kind of, I went into the Royal Court Young Writers group, and then went into the studio group, which they kind of ask people to go back, and then from there you go into the commission group or whatever group. So I've done like 3 or 4 groups at the Royal Court, and then like Headlong Theatre, they had a group, and then the Young Vic, they had a group, and the Hampstead, they had a group. So you're kind of doing the rounds in these groups, and they're picking up your plays basically, and you're finding other playwrights, you're finding directors, you're finding actors. So you're kind of finding your people, and at the same time you're kind of doing your plays, your short versions at the one act nights, and you're doing a little fringe production over here that's going to move basically. So I think there's a really vibrant community where you can like really cut your teeth with very little risk basically, which, I mean, I wonder if by the time I'd got to New York I was maybe too established to find it, if that makes sense. And then here it's really funny. I was talking to Chris Fields, who's the artistic director of the Echo, who's doing the play, and you know, he's directing, and he was telling me about this theatre that I've never even heard of, and I'm like, I just haven't been here long enough to know the scene basically. So yeah.
What's the theatre?
The Coronet, I want to say.
That sounds familiar. Oh, I'm ashamed.
You don't know the theatre? Oh yeah, then it doesn't matter. By the way, I'm really into this play noir thing. I want to read some. Maybe I'll write a noir.
Please do. So is I'm going to use the term state funded. Is there state?
Oh, I forgot a really important part of that picture. Oh my gosh, yes. There's the Art Council. Oh my god, I owe the Art Council my entire career. I owe the Art Council my American career as well, because without the Art Council I couldn't have done the residency that got me to America in the first place. The Art Council is amazing. So basically, the lottery in the UK was set up in the 90s at some point. And what they decided to do with that, the government at the time, it might have even have been a Tory government that set it up. So actually, you know, the enemy helped. They decided that all of the what's the word I'm looking for?
Incoming?
Yes, thank you. All the income from the lottery. I've been writing it. Do you find with other playwrights that you talk to that if they're actually writing something that day, they've lost all their words by the time they get to you?
No, what I find that more often than not is that I'll throw a question out that has to do with their writing, and because they're not writing at the moment, they have no idea how to answer it because they're not in the throes of it.
Okay, because I'm writing, I'm just like, I've used all my words for today. Okay, so anyway, so the income from the lottery, they put, I think, like 50% of it into healthcare or something, and the rest into art and culture, basically. So they set up the Art Council, and the Art Council is amazing, basically. And once you're in with the Art Council, they will keep supporting you, and they'll support ideas. So you can do things like, oh, I need 10 grand to do like a 3-month R&D, like where I write a little bit, get a couple of actors in a room and a director, and then go and write a little bit. Or they'll support entire productions, basically. And yeah, they've supported me so much. They were like a whole bunch of R&Ds I did, some early plays that never saw the light of day, 2 of my first productions they supported, and then they started this thing in 2019. I can't even remember the name of the fund, but basically it gave you up to a certain amount of money, and one of the things that you could do with that money was go and do a residency in another country, basically. And at the same time, I'd been offered this residency in New York, and they were giving me a stipend. And then I applied for the rest from the Arts Council, and they literally gave it to me. It was amazing. So yes, so I think, and I've often wondered, like, what are the equivalencies here in America? Because I know there's the National Endowment, and there are a few things in New York where if you're a writer or whatever, you can apply for stuff. But it's always felt like a shame to me that, like, something like the lottery, which is one of the these lotteries that are huge here, that they aren't doing the same kind of thing, because it feels like a really good use of that money, especially because it's taxed as well, right, here.
Probably would
Yeah,
never.
Yeah, it's not taxed in the UK. I don't know if it's taxed in Europe. But anyway, so it's all of that money is available for the arts, which I just thought was really forward thinking and has been really helpful.
Sure, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, it helps people in drama schools as well. Like if you want to go to drama school or film school or whatever, and you're from like a working class background and or like a poorer background and you don't have the money, you can apply for their scholarships and they'll just cover your funds and give you a stipend. It's really great.
That's good to hear. I'm going to ask a stupid question because I pretty much know the answer.
Questions.
And if you've experienced both, then tell me the difference, if there is one. I'm assuming when you say Fringe, you're talking about London Fringe.
Yes.
Okay, not Edinburgh.
No, I've never actually had a play. Oh, no, that's not true. I've had a play on at Edinburgh Fringe that I've written that I haven't been involved with, but I never took a play to Edinburgh because Vault became... So Edinburgh was like really big... kind of, I guess, before I came up, and it's still really, I mean, it's a big festival, right?
Sure, yeah.
But I think it was slightly losing some of its gravitas in terms of playwriting. Like for comedy and music and all that kind of stuff, still there.
Okay.
But I think for playwriting, I'm probably going to get shot for this, not these playwrights are going to go, no, it hasn't, you're talking out your ass. But certainly when I first came onto the scene, Vault, which was a London version of it that ran for 3 months, basically through the winter, and had a really punk, it was in this amazing space, and all, underneath the train station in Waterloo. Was it Waterloo? London Bridge? I forgot my places. Oh my god. Somewhere in central London. And it was like all of these cavernous theatre spaces, and it just felt like really punk and really rock and roll and just like really sexy. And there were like gigs and plays, and all of these exciting playwrights were on there. Like that was where I really, really cut my teeth as well. I got 2-3 plays on there, and that was always really, really fun. Basically.
I want to go back to COVID.
That old chestnut.
Yeah, but here's the thing, especially from a playwright perspective. And you said that the that's all right. Is that a sneeze or a cough?
It was a kind of...
Fair enough. I just want to make sure at least acknowledge it. Said gesundheit if it was.
You said COVID and I start like coughing. Dramatic effect.
It's contagious. So, but, and this is where I came from, and is this when it came down to lockdowns and stuff. I don't know how. Were you in New York or?
I was in New York.
Okay,
So there was I was on because One Jewish Boy was in the West End at the time, so I was on one of the last planes to get out of London, basically to get back to New York because my dog was here.
Okay. All right. So, but here's my thing. This was my take on lockdowns, especially for as long as they lasted or didn't last, or depending on where you were. You better show up. You better have something at the end. You better have something to show for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that and I understand where you say the pressure was off, but at the same time, it's like this is a great opportunity to take the time to get something done and to have come out the other end with either a screenplay, a full-length play, a couple plays, a noir anthology of noir production.
Oh, is that where it came from? Is it came from the pandemic?
We did 7 seasons of it.
Oh wow!
Those have all been produced under Punk Monkey Productions, and so it's like
I should know this. I'm sorry.
No, it's very niche. I told myself I better have something to show for at the end, and I took that time to sit back, and I think I wound up publishing each individual season, and once I finished that one, that's when we went into production for publication for the whole entire anthology, and threw in a couple of bonus plays. So it was like I better step up.
I think I went the other way because
just froze, just stopped, or
well, I mean, I don't want to get too dark, but that first week of the pandemic, I had this play like in the West End. It was like literally the high point in the career. One of the things there was a bunch of things I wanted to achieve, and a play on the West End in London is obviously one of them. And it's this high point, and then I'd also got like a film deal off the back of this, and there was a TV thing that was happening as well, and then so like it's literally and I just won like this award for like the like the most promising young writer or whatever award basically. So it's just like I was and I got this residency in New York, and I just moved to New York, so I was literally like, oh my god, this is everything that I've like worked for basically. This is amazing. And then suddenly this thing happens, and like within a week the whole thing got cancelled basically, and it was like a sucker punch. right?
Everything the Brits got put on,
Yeah. And I lay down for a minute because I didn't enjoy that at all. But then I was like, there's absolute freedom here. Because for the first time in a really, really, really long time, I could take the brakes off all of this ambition and all of this work and all of this. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. I've got to get there. I've got to get here.
Sure.
And I just stopped. And I was in New York. And stopping in New York, the ability to stop in New York was actually just kind of wonderful. So there was like, I think the first part of the pandemic was really, really difficult for me.
Sure.
Like really, you know, my mental health suffered, and you know, we know this story from like a whole bunch of people. Yeah. But then once I stopped fighting it, and I took that break, and then realized I'm healthy, I'm young, I've got this. It's kind of amazing that in such a short time, I'd only moved there like 6 or 7 months before. I found these amazing people. I'd got this wonderful dog, you know. I found this like really cute little studio in the West Village, and it was just it was actually weirdly like a really nice time with my friends and just like learning about who I am and seeing this city. And so I didn't, that very first kind of, I can't even remember how long it was. It was like 4 or 5 months, right? Wasn't it? The very first like wave of the pandemic before things. It was kind of till the fall, wasn't it? So about October time. Yeah. So like 6 months. I didn't really do much, basically. I wrote a little bit. I like sketched some ideas, but I didn't put that kind of same pressure on myself. But then when things started up again, then I was like, oh shit, I need to scramble. Right. Basically, I really do, because I was like everyone else. Everyone else did write the screenplay. Everyone else did write the next play. So then I think that next section, I worked really hard. And then when, I don't know what happened here in LA, but certainly in London, in New York, we had that next wave of COVID that was kind of, when we got locked down again, which kind of felt even harder than the first one. Then I was like, now I have to make this count.
Right, sure.
Basically, now I have to like make sure I work hard, and I get my ducks in a row, and I'm in the best position to emerge from this. And, you know, I wrote 2 plays and 2 screenplays as well, actually. And then that was all happening, and then obviously then the strikes came along. And I was just like, I can't catch a break here. Like, it's like wild.
Yeah. But because you were talking about because you had some strikes in London as well?
No, here.
Just here. Now, were the New York strikes, were those theater strikes?
No, the writer strikes.
Okay, sure. Yeah, okay.
I kind of made this kind of decision that I wasn't going to write another play again in my life. I don't know why. I was like, I'm never going to write another play. I don't have another play in me. That lasted about 4 months, and I was like, I've got actually tons of plays in me, and I actually really miss being in theatre. So I kind of went down this kind of, I was kind of building towards this screenwriting crossover, basically.
Right, yeah.
And then that happened. It was like, oh, bugger, I can't catch a break here. I'm just going to move to LA.
So did you do any theatre in LA?
In LA?
I mean, in New York, sorry.
I did the kind of weird science play that started in DC, and that, which I was like one of the collaborators on, and then that moved to New York. But in terms of straight theatre, no. Is that true? Have I done any theatre in New York? No, because the kids' play was in Maryland, and then the other production of One Jewish Boy was in DC. The reason why I feel like I've done theatre in New York is because this residency at the American Museum of Natural History, that I thought that was going to be a year, basically. Now I've kind of stepped down from being the writer in residence, which actually ended up being for like 3.5 years, and now I'm like an associate artist, basically. And we've been working on a bunch of things, but Velocity, we've been working on that play, and we've workshopped that a whole bunch. So we've done like workshops there, and had readings and stuff. But I haven't actually had a New York production, like a straight play New York production.
So on that note, not about the New York productions, but more the Astrophysics Team at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, which we were just mentioning.
Yeah. The story
sounds more aerodynamics than it is a playwriting group or a theater company.
You'd be surprised. There's like a really amazing theatre comes out
at the Natural History Museum. That's what I'm. Can you unpack that now?
Okay.
What's that whole environment like, and how does one get involved?
Okay, so shall I tell you the story of how it happened? Because the story of how it happened is wild. 100%. Okay, so I wanted to move to New York for as long as I've always wanted to live in America. I remember being a little kid, and at school, one of the teachers said, like in a morning assembly, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember being like 7 or whatever and putting my hand in the air and saying an American, right? And I remember that like I saw the Golden Gate Bridge on TV when I was like even younger, and I remember saying to my mum, I want to be where they make things that big, basically. So I've always been like this huge...
London Bridge doesn't count.
It really doesn't. And so... that's always been in the back of my mind,
sure.
You know. Okay. And I always wanted to do theatre in New York and come and do whatever here in LA. And One Jewish Boy had the very first production. It was starting to do well. And I was thinking about maybe this is a time to come, you know, and I'd been coming to New York like all the time. And, you know, things were going well, and, you know, I did some TV and stuff over in the UK as well. So I was like, okay, I'm building up quite a nice little, you know, portfolio of work here.
Sure.
So I asked my agent if he could set me up some meetings in New York, basically. And he was like, yeah. And I don't know, something in me was like, this is the move. Basically, this is the absolute move. Actually, I need to backtrack. Sure. When I did my play Run, so Run is this monologue about a queer Jewish kid falling in love for the first time, basically. And I didn't want to do a coming out story, and I didn't want to do like, you know, the usual kind of like whatever. I just wanted to talk about what it meant to be Jewish, what it meant to be queer. And at the time I was writing it, I've always been obsessed with space. And at the time I was writing it, I just noticed in the sky that Jupiter and Venus were coming together. And when I was reading about it, there was going to be a point in the summer where they would be kind of behind one another. So it would look like it would be the brightest object in the sky and look like a new star. Excuse me, sorry. And I thought that was a really beautiful metaphor for this love story. So I ended up putting a lot of astrophysics into the play, basically, and like really basing it in the science. And because it's a one actor, we originally did it at Vault that I mentioned before, and it did really well at Vault. And then we went into an off West End theatre. And then the guys, they were so cool, and it was like their first season. One of my dear friends, Isley, who should totally get on here, by the way, one of my dear friends, Isley, opened their first season, and I closed the first season, and that was like really, really special. Nice. And they said to me, because this play was like 70 minutes, no interval, and, you know, it was kind of their first season, they moved into this great big space in central London that, you know, they needed to generate kind of bar money. So they said, could you put together a bunch of after show things, basically. So we did a couple of really cool things. One of them, which I try and always do now, is opening night of any show. On the first Friday, after the opening night is what I mean, I always try and do like a Shabbat service in the theatre, which is always really fun, and get a rabbi in and just, you know, get people to just join, whether you're Jewish or not, just kind of hang out. It's really fun. And actually what I thought for this would be really fun is to get an astrophysicist to come in and talk about the relationship between art and science, basically. And so I was trying to find a queer astrophysicist because it was a queer play. And a friend of a friend mentioned that they could potentially get to this woman at AMNH called Rebecca Oppenheimer, who's this trans... she's probably the leading trans scientist in the world. I mean, Rebecca's really fucking special. Like, she is fucking amazing. She like, am I allowed to swear? Sorry.
Oh, absolutely.
She proved brown dwarfs, the idea of brown dwarf was just a theory. She proved them when she was like 25 years old, that it was real, and she discovered the first one, basically, and she's just been on this trajectory. Anyway, so I wrote to this woman, and I was like, can you, because apparently she was also connected to Cambridge, like, will you be in England during these dates? And if you are in England, you know, would you be up for this? And even if you aren't in England, we could maybe, you know, video link you in. And she sent me this very lovely email basically saying no. And I probably forgot all about her. Okay, so fast forward. And I say to my agent, get me some meetings in New York. I'm going to go to New York, basically. And then I'm going to have to backtrack again now. My great aunt died on the Titanic.
Oh, wow.
And I always wanted to complete her journey. And for some reason, I just knew that this would be the move. I didn't have anything concrete. There was nothing going on. It was like, I'm moving to America. This trip is going to make it happen. So I thought, because this was the trip that was going to, get me to move to America, I would sail. So I came here on the Queen Mary 2, basically.
Oh, nice.
It turns out I'm really seasick. And sailing to New York in November when you get really, really seasick is not a great idea because it's stormy as fuck. And so the boat is literally doing this. Oh, am I? Okay. I smoke in very few situations. Sometimes when I'm in rehearsal, though not this one, to just get out of the room. And sometimes when I feel like maybe I'm going to die at sea. So I'm on the top deck of the Queen Mary 2 in this storm. And I remember I've always got a baseball cap on because it keeps my brain in place. And I'm wearing this red vinyl jacket with a NASA t-shirt on underneath, smoking a cigarette. And on the opposite side of this table, literally as far away as you are from me now, there's two women talking, and I'm not really listening, but I'm, you're right there. You're kind of listening, and it becomes really apparent that this person is Rebecca Oppenheimer.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm really sorry. Excuse me. Can I interrupt? And they're like, what? And I'm like, are you Rebecca Oppenheimer? And she's like really defensive. She's like, who are you? I'm like, I don't know if you remember me. I wrote to you like 2 years ago, blah, blah, blah. I'm playwright Stephen Laughton. And she's like, yeah, I do. And then we got chatting and we thought it was like a wild time. And she's asking me about the play. And so in the UK, and I missed this. I wish that we did this in the US. We published the play text as a program. In the UK, so you have like the first half of the text is like what you'd get in a normal program, and then the second half is the play text. So I had a bunch of them with me because I was doing all of these. My agent had set up all of these meetings with theatres in New York, and so I wanted to give them the play rather than a PDF because it looks nice as a book. It's it's a physical thing. It's gorgeous. So I had a bunch of them with me, so I gave it to her, and then we probably just go off on our merry way, and then I see her a few days later, and she's like, "I read your play. I thought it was beautiful. It was really beautiful." And we got talking about it, and she was like, the science in there is solid. You don't often get good science in plays. And, she'd studied at Columbia, and I think the first year of Columbia, you have to do general studies. So she'd done a bunch of theatre, basically. She was kind of really into theatre as well. And then we become friends. We get to New York. She's like, let me give you, swap numbers. She's like, you should come up to the museum and I'll give you an after-hours tour of the museum. And I was like, oh, that'd be really cool. So I go up a few nights later and we're doing this tour, and there's some art on the wall that are like plates that you would get, old glass plates that you would get on a telescope that were painted in, basically. And I'm like, oh my God, they're really, really stunning. What is that? And so Leah Halloran is an LA-based artist. And she's also a friend of Rebecca's. And so what Leah does, Leah takes like plates and astronomical artifacts, and she does a bunch of fine art with them, basically. So Rebecca was like, I got Leah to come in because I'm trying to get this artist in residence thing set up here. And I just got really excited, and I was like, oh my God, that's like really cool. Like, what an amazing place to do. And she just kind of asks me what turns out to be a very leading question. What would you do if you were the artist in residence here? So I just kind of witter on for like an hour or so. And then, we go on our merry ways. I cannot believe my phone is ringing. I am sorry.
That's my wife. Hang up.
It's the director of the plays, Chris. He's checking I'm here. I never answer the phone to him. It's really funny. I always miss his calls.
We should have chimed him in.
Should we chime him in? Should I call him back?
That would be fun.
It would be a little... Shall I answer the phone?
Let's see if we can...
He might still be there.
See if we can Bluetooth it.
Chris?
Stephen, do you have a quick moment?
You're live on a podcast that I'm doing. But it'd be really funny. Let's do it.
See if you can you Bluetooth him in.
Jesse, a nice Jewish boy from North London, falls hopelessly in love with Alex, a mixed-race woman from South London. How they struggle to stay in love as they are confronted with the world's unpredictable cruelties, the biting, funny, bittersweet story of one Jewish boy. Now, how do I put anti-Semitism into that blurb?
You want me to answer that right now?
Yeah, because I'll tell you why.
This is a first.
A student of mine is a cantor, and she has like thousands of followers, and she has a huge like Jewish world. I also talked to another student of mine who worked for the American Jewish community. So she's gonna go out to her network. So Jessie, a nice Jewish boy from North London, falls hopelessly in love with Alex, a mixed race woman from South London. How they struggle to stay in love as they're confronted with the world's as they are confronted with anti-Semitism, the cruelty of anti-Semitism is with the world.
I always kind of ran with a romantic comedy about anti-Semitism. I always kind of put that in there somewhere. Can you work that in there? The problem is I need to see it on paper, and I'm doing this Ready podcast, and I've got a phone and not my glasses.
I'm gonna
Ready podcast.
Right, if you could do it, good, because she's waiting for this. So do it as soon as you can, okay?
Okay, I will. Bye, love. That was amazing.
Unfortunately, it was paired with my phone. I was going to try to get it to where the phone actually would come over.
Well, could you hear it on the microphone?
I could.
Okay,
I just
great.
don't know how it's going to come across in the recording. But
okay, that's really
brilliant.
funny. And now I have to answer this question about anti-Semitism. Anyway, you can wait for half an hour. Bless him. What was I saying? Leah Halloran.
What would you do?
What would I do if I was the thing? And I can't remember my answer, but I witted on it anyway. And we met up a few more times, and then actually she came over to London to see the original production of One Jewish Boy that was playing that winter. And we kind of had this fast friendship, and we kind of talked about maybe I'd go to New York or whatever. And then in the January, I just get this call from her, much like this, which is, "Are you near a computer?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm on my iPhone." She's like, "Do you have access to your email?" I'm like, "Yeah, because it's like the 21st century." And she's like, "I just sent you an email, read it and tell me what you think." And then I get this email, and it's this like offer letter basically saying, "Come to New York anytime this year, and it's a bit of a stipend and blah 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 blah, and you'll be the artist in residence." And I was like, "That's great. That's like really, really great. Yeah, I'll do it." So then I saw that the Art Council had that fund, so I applied for that. And anyway, it all came together really, really beautifully. And I thought I was just going to, go to America for a few months, and ended up just like having a blast on this thing. I mean, it was like, because I had no idea what I was going to do, basically. I didn't know what it was really going to look like. But I knew I was going to make it count, because it just felt like this really amazing opportunity to do something like really, really interesting. And the thing that I'm really interested in as a writer is I just want to be the best writer that I can be.
Sure.
Like I'll always lean into challenges. And I'm going through a weird phase right now. I always went through a weird phase, but it's like there's I just want to like challenge like what I can do, and just to keep it interesting. Not for any particular end game, but like just to, this is my job. Like I may as well be the best I can do at it and have as much fun along the way, right? So anyway, so I go into this residency with no clue, and people were like really warm. I just basically just went to meetings and hung out and spoke to people and asked them what their research was about, and just got ideas from it. Basically, I mean, the thing is, I'm working on another project. I'm going to bounce around a lot. It's going to be really annoying. I am working with this director right now. We're talking about, we've got one film that's about to shoot, and we're talking about the next movie. And we were talking about process, because both him and I, we come from completely opposite ends of story, basically. And I realized only today that a good story hook is all I'm interested in, and like from there I'll just work it out, basically. And like in that conversation with him, there was just like this realization that for me to want to do anything, there has to just be like this. I don't care about the characters, I'll work that out. I don't care about the plot, I'll work it out. It's about like what the hook is, and if there's like a moral hook or like a really interesting like scientific or philosophical hook, like I'm there, basically. And so what was really interesting when I found myself in this place that was, my entire life, right, has been about the arts. I was always like a really artistic kid. I remember my best friend's dad introduced me to theatre when I was like, 12 or 13. He gave me like a Beckett play and then took us to see it, and I fell in love, and I've always been into like film and TV and what have you. So my entire life has always been about stories, has been artistic, and I went to, we call college in the UK like the place you go from 16 to 18 between school and university. So like my college was like a performing arts course, and then I went to drama school, and then I went back to drama school to do my writing MA. And, you know, and then from there I'd worked in TV and then in film and then in theatre. So my entire life has been around these amazing, creative, artistic people. I have never been around real academics before. I've never been around real scientists. So, you know, I'm a bright enough lad, I read shit, but like just suddenly being in this completely different world with this completely different type of person, you know, was really fascinating, like in terms of characters, in terms of these stories, in terms of these amazing pieces of research, you know, that you could like these grand, you know, they're looking at these huge things about life, about who we are, about the world that we're in, you know, and they're doing these like crazy, like some of the research is just insane. Some of the papers I was reading was insane. And, you know, a bunch of them are way more artistic than you think, basically. So they're always trying to do stuff, basically. And, you know, people coming up and giving me their ideas and whatever. So it was a really fruitful place. And I found that I was getting inspired by stuff I was reading and stuff I was hearing. But also I could go and think about this sci-fi idea and then just, you know, go to a scientist or four and go, hey, like, what, you know, this is what I'm trying to get to. What's the best thing? And I remember very early in the residency, Rebecca has been working with NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab at Caltech here and a bunch of other agencies to build this spectrograph that is now on the Palomar Observatory down in San Diego. And they're essentially looking for life. And when you're looking for life right now in the world, it's usually by radio, right? We're listening for it, yeah, because we can't see, because basically there's a great big bloody star in the way, blocking out the light. So Rebecca's research has been researching how you take that light and then you use it to essentially create eclipses. So you kind of refract the light behind the telescope to then shine that light, turn it into infrared, and then you shine it on the planet, and then you can look at the atmosphere of the planet, and you can see what the gases are, and if there's like methane or whatever. So, you know, they're going to find like a load of stuff, but, you know, I think the ultimate aim is to find life. So I was on that research team when they installed that into Palomar, and Rebecca and I went to Caltech and we got this piece, you know, this, I think it's like $40 million piece of equipment that looked like the Ark from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we had it in the back of a Penske rental, and we drive with a playlist from, you know, here in LA up a mountain with this thing clattering around in the back, listening to like rock music. It was really, really fun. And then we get there and there's all of these scientists like going, you know, who are you? Why are you here? You know, and actually, you know, I remember one guy going, you want to be, I guess you want to write sci-fi, right? And I'm like, amongst other things, but yeah, it'd be fun to write sci-fi. And then he kind of starts giving me this lecture about how writers are always really good at getting the big ideas, but they're terrible at the details. So if I wanted to prove my worth with this community as a writer, I better learn quick. And he gave me a screwdriver and he was like, so help us. So it's just like really amazing that I just got like stuck in with these people. But there was one point, which is, this is really dumb. I tried to touch oh my god, what is wrong with my brain? What's the really cold gas?
Not nitrogen.
Yeah, liquid nitrogen.
Okay.
Yeah. I tried to touch liquid nitrogen because I was like, oh my god, that's really pretty. And this side just grabs my hand and is literally like, do not touch that if you value your fingers, you idiot. So it's just kind of like all of these really fun, weird little, and you know, and it was then that I started working on this play Velocity. Basically, I read this paper and I started like really looking at science plays and looking at what they meant. And actually, one of the things I was talking to a lot was many of them are, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but they're kind of, the science isn't integral to the piece. Like it could easily be about a song or a shopping list, or, you know, it's about scientists rather than science. And I thought, actually, if I'm going to write a solid science play, I want the science to be as important to the very structure of the piece as it is to the narrative, basically. So, you know, I was working on that, and we've created this kind of crazy play that's going to open there later on this year. We're going to actually do it in the planetarium, which is going to be just incredible, like a full run, like in the planetarium. It's going to be amazing, and like a first for New York. It'll be like a really nice, fun thing to do. But in terms of the other question that you're asking about, like what all of the science that comes out of it, well, so basically, or the theatre that comes out of it, there's another curator. So Rebecca's one of 4 curators in the Astrophysics team. And there's another woman, Ruth Angus, who's a Brit. And she joined about 6 months before I did. And before she became a scientist, she was also into theatre, basically. So there is this correlation. So she's been working. What's really great about the museum is that these curators, they have their own budgets. They they have to do their own outreach work and whatever. So they kind of all do their own thing. So there's lots of little things going on around the museum all the time. And I think like one of the biology teams got a production of Moby Dick to come in and do it underneath the whale. So there's and there's films and they have festivals and all of this kind of stuff. There's music in there. So there's like lots of artistry jumping up, but there's nothing that has been connected. So Ruth and Rebecca have been working very much together with they've been getting their separate funding of coming together and creating a program, because there's lots of other little artists in residence around the place, basically, and kind of pulling this into one big program essentially. And I think that was difficult under the previous administration, but there's a new administration now who were like really open to like doing all of this stuff. And it was really good, it was a really great, fruitful experience. I mean, I think I came up with like 2 short films, one that we made, and a couple of plays.
Nice.
Which is, not bad, actually.
No, not at all. I want to go back because you used the term. No, not at all. No, not at all. You used a term. I don't want to make assumptions that anybody who's listening knows what it is.
Uh-huh.
What is a hook? And then what makes a great hook?
Okay, so what is a hook?
Because this is a great starting point, because again, this is another aspect of playwriting, is because you're coming from a different point than most playwrights would. And so that might be the really one obstacle that somebody might be like, I like that, I'm going to use it because that's going to help me overcome so much in my own writing. So what's a hook? What makes a good hook?
Okay, I think I've stolen it from film and TV, because it's really weird, because although I really grew to love theatre as a teen and weird theatre, I then kind of got pulled into film and TV.
Sure.
Especially early on in my career. So when I started becoming really an artist myself, I was coming from a visual place. And I think a lot of writers in the UK, I don't know how fair this is to say, I don't want to speak for people, but I think there's more of a literary sensibility. And I'm not interested in that as much. I'm interested in the visual aspects. And that's why I think in many ways I've always enjoyed, I very much like American directors directing my work, because they don't give a shit about the words. They give a shit about the drama, basically, and that makes me a better writer, because that's what I want to get to. So a hook, I think I've borrowed from film and TV. A hook is like the mechanism, essentially, that you're going to deliver the story, right? So let me think of a really good example. Oh my God, everything has gone out of my head.
Remember when we talked about it earlier, this is one of those moments when I'll ask a question and you're not in the throes of writing, that it's going to throw you off and you're not going to,
Well, I want to think about, because okay, so One Jewish Boy, right, is the delivery mechanism. Okay, I'm talking about rising anti-Semitism, and how, as a left-wing Jew, because of the discourse around Israel, how sometimes I felt excluded from some of those conversations, or accountable for parts of those conversations that I didn't feel was fair for me to be accountable for, because I'm not Israeli. And the rise in something, I kind of wanted to make a point about, essentially, we on the left, and I will always say this till the day I die, we on the left have to be careful of doing the work of the right, and one of the ways we do that in this particular, I think one of the main ways we do it is actually, we're not very good at forming coalitions, we're not very good at allyship, because we're so busy dying on our heels, right? But I think that the other thing that we can be a little bit guilty of sometimes, me included, is some sloppy language, basically. And the point I was trying to make is that some criticism that can be ill thought out can fire at the right. And right-wing anti-Semitism is the kind of I don't think any left-wing people who have been accused of anti-Semitism want to see the mass death of Jewish people. But unfortunately, some Nazis on the right really do think that, basically. So what I mean by a hook is, how do I explore this really deep, dark subject that's also slightly critical of my own community in a way that it can land, and my hook is by smashing that into a domestic situation. So it's a relationship between a Jewish man and a mixed race woman, and how they should both know better, because they're both experiencing different versions of exactly the same thing, but they're not always very good at being allies, basically. And I dissect a relationship over the course of 10 years out of order, so I can explore this thesis, basically to kind of to see if my initial worry is true or not, and also to present, hey world, here's a problem that I'd like us to discuss, because certainly in London as well, as a Jewish playwright, it's like there aren't very many of us. No one's talking about modern anti-Semitism, and a lot of anti-Semitism plays are usually about the Holocaust, and I don't want to go there, basically. Sure. So, I've got nothing to add to the canon, basically. So what I mean by hook is like, what is that mechanism that will help us? The film that I'm working on with John at the moment that we're about to shoot, the hook on that is literally, and I loved it, he brought it to me, it's so good, the hook is so solid. It's about a suicide prevention worker who gets a call from a 17-year-old boy, and she knows that she's supposed to save his life, but after talking to him, the most compassionate part of her nature is challenged, because she knows deep in her soul that the most compassionate thing to do is to let this kid die, basically. So we can talk about what compassion is, what autonomy over the body is, what autonomy over life is, so like the hook is like the mechanism where we can, the delivery mechanism, the sexy delivery mechanism to deliver another thesis, basically, or like the deeper thesis.
Maybe the same as exploring the idea.
Yeah. So and I'm really into like sexy hooks and like really morally ambiguous or murky stories.
Sure. And I know you said you stole it from screenwriting or Hollywood, but that's not to be the same. A hook would not be the same as a log line.
I mean, a log line, I think, is a summation of the hook.
Got it. Okay.
I don't know if that's technically correct. When this goes out, all of these people are going to come for me and just go, that guy just talks out of his ass. He doesn't know anything. I don't claim to know anything. Everything is like my own opinion.
This is again, this is a subjective podcast. This is like, how do you approach it? Because again, you don't know what information, insight, or advice that you're going to give that's going to help somebody overcome whatever obstacle they're dealing with. That's going to get them over that hump. Or like, now I get it. Again, I liken this podcast to as if every playwright that I have on has written their own book on playwriting.
Okay. I don't know if I'm clever enough to write a book on playwriting.
Well, you're writing it as we speak. It's just being recorded.
It's not going to be a bestseller. You're going to find it in the bargain bin.
Not at all. One other question I do have, because you said something earlier, and I just want you said you don't. I don't remember if you said I don't sound like British playwrights or I don't sound like London playwrights. I sound like an American playwright. Was it British or London playwrights?
I might have said both things.
Oh, okay. And what does a London/British playwright sound like?
Oh God, everyone's going to come for me. I'm going to get in so much trouble.
It's
not a criticism. Actually, it's not a criticism, because there are so many. Okay. Some of my favorite. It's about speed, I think. Okay. I think it's about speed. I think it's about, because when I think about but then I read Annie Baker, and I love Annie Baker. Annie Baker could be a London playwright, right? Okay. Like a British playwright. Like her attention to detail is exquisite, right?
And is that in the dialogue, or is that just
in the whole pace of the whole thing? Do you know what I mean? Like there's this, and like another playwright I really love in the UK is Dave Moore, DC Moore. He just writes these. I mean, they're not slow, but there's like this, I don't know, like this assuredness, this kind of like delicacy that I'm absolutely incapable of. Like I'm literally like, we'll just smash the glass at the wall and see what happens. Basically, I'm very much that kind of school, and I'm like fast talkers, smart ass people. Like every single play starts with a caveat: these people think faster than they talk. No, talk faster than they think.
Sure, yeah.
Basically. So it's just kind of like, and all the way down there are just slashes and double lines and all these people talking over each other. And I think there's something more, not more visual, but I think I'm coming from a screen aesthetic rather than a theatre aesthetic.
Okay.
Basically.
But that doesn't include switching locations and
No, I just think well, look, I mean, One Jewish Boy is set over 10 years technically, I think like 16 years when you put in the last scene, in multiple locations, and is told out of sync, basically. And
Is that a Pinter approach?
No, because he just told the story backwards, didn't he, in Betrayal?
No, it's all over the place.
Yeah, I guess so, actually.
Yeah. I only bring that up because you said that you liked some.
I do, yeah. But the reason why I was like, because actually the film that I kind of was inspired by was 5x2 by Francois Ozon. Okay. I loved what he did in that film, and he told the story backwards as well. He dissected the end of a relationship, and he did this amazing thing where in each act, as you're going back in time, so you go from their divorce to their wedding, basically. Actually, you go to their first meeting. And each time he made it their fault, basically. And that was really interesting. So I wanted to take that further and play around with time in a really interesting way, and to reveal something about the characters every time we visited them. But yeah, I've probably what I've stolen from Pinter is just meandering dialogue that then comes back, because I really like to build up to, I like people to have real conversations, basically. Sure. So I like, I guess I've stolen that from him, and I've stolen like pop culture from Quentin Tarantino, and I've stolen bringing in Jewish ritual from Tony Kushner. So it's just kind of like I'm borrowing. I borrow from the fast and the color of Pedro Moldovar. So it's just kind of like all of these. I sometimes aim. I've tried to aim, especially in one scene. I literally rip off Annie Baker, because she will literally write how long someone will touch another person for. So I'm like, that's really smart. Cheers, Annie.
Nice.
Because it's like, to be a good writer, you just steal from the best, right? Yeah. So I don't mean it in any, when I say I'm different from these people, I'm not trying to say I'm above or greater or anything. I actually really respect a bunch of these people. I just think that they're really clever, and they know their literature, some theatre that I see seems to be really deeply rooted in this English idea of literature, and I find it really difficult to read books. I think I'm a bit ADHD. There's too much detail in it. Sure. I don't need to know what the wall looks like. I got an imagination. Just what are they saying, Right. I don't know if that's a fair thing to say, because there are so many British writers that I really admire. I just don't necessarily write like them. I just think there's just something about the speed and the visual aspects, I guess.
Well, you have to make your way. You have to find your own way to stand out, and I think that you've done a great job at achieving that. And I'm pretty sure we've already covered this, but I'm going to ask it anyways, because that's what I do. What are you working on right now?
What I'm working on right now? I wonder if I can talk about this. I'm going to. I am so horrified by what we're seeing here right now. And I have been saying for years, even in this play, these cycles repeat themselves every 75 to 100 years, and we're literally seeing it piecemeal being played out again. And so there's part of me that has tremendous faith in the Constitution and the fact that maybe fascism won't roll out properly here, because I know the Constitution is only as solid as the people enforcing it, but sure. What we do have on our side in America is the fact that it's a federation. So most of the laws that affect our day-to-day lives are federal ones. So hopefully, we're in a blue state, so we won't see the worst of it. But I'm also horrified by the fact that the left don't seem to be doing anything. And this feels more important than ever, that we need a coalition. I actually wrote to 25 leading Democrats 2 weeks ago and basically said, what are you doing? Including the 3 Supreme Court justices. What are you doing? Come on. The only person to respond to me was Adam Schiff, I guess because he's a local guy. But come on, AOC, come on, Bernie, right back. Let's make this happen. I decided I wanted to write a protest play. And I had 2 ideas. And one was a retelling of Marisade, basically.
Oh, wow. All right.
Set in a prison here, that rather than I'm going to get into so much trouble. I'm going to get kicked out of the country. Rather than putting on a play about the assassination of Jean-Paul Marat, it would be a play about the assassination of Trump. And I can't remember the full title, but it was essentially, like following that full form, but it would be Trump and Stormy Daniels, essentially. And the idea was it would be a queer theatre group in a prison and who were putting on this play, and the director is a drag queen who does a very fine Stormy Daniels, basically. So that was one of them. And the other one was the Enabler monologues. And that would be like, I wrote a list of like the 40 people on the left and right who've enabled Trump, basically. And I was talking to, we did a fundraiser at the Echo a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to Chris about both of them. We were just like chatting, and he was like, these are fucking great. But he really like loved the Enabler monologues. He was like, we could do this at the same time as One Jewish Boy. And I was like, dude, I cannot write 40 monologues right now. Why don't we get a bunch of playwrights together? So we are putting together a team of leading and emerging writers from theatre and film and TV, and we're going to meet. We've got like 20 people so far, and we're going to kind of make this protest play. So that's the immediate future. I've just finished a draft of another film that I've been working on for like 2 years. It's like a horror film that also explores rising, uses a meteor to talk about the indoctrination and the lurch to the right of young white guys. Because I was hanging out with some of my friends, and we were like talking about the fact that everything's got something to say. Everyone's got something to say about white guys, rightly so, about them being really fucked up. But white guys aren't criticising themselves. So we're like, well, we're white guys. We're seeing this is fucking gross. We should say something, basically. So there's that. And then I'm working on another project with John, TV spec. This play Giants keeps being drafted. It's called Technicolor now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's it's crazy. That's set in the desert in Marfa. So actually, as soon as the play goes up, I have to go down to Marfa, Texas, to do like a recce and a little bit more R&D on that play. So yeah, there's like a bunch of little things essentially.
Real quick, because I meant to ask it, because you just talked about you left New York, you're doing filming in New York, right? Did you come to LA to do theater? Because that's not usually the direction you go.
I came to LA because my movie got greenlit, and I was like, why don't I just go and be in LA? And I'd wanted to move down here a bunch of times anyway. And so Rebecca at the museum is really good friends with this amazing film and TV writer called Jessica, who's here in LA, and we met up, and then I met up with a bunch of people, and everyone kept telling me to come to LA. They were like, you got a really nice personality, you do really well here, like people will like you, just come and just do it. And I was like, I really want to. And then I needed to convince my partner, who's very established in New York, that this was a good idea. And then I managed to talk him around, and he got like a really great job here, and then our film got greenlit, and I was like, well, now this is it. We have to move to LA. And then when I moved here, Jessica's on the board of the Echo, basically, and she introduced me to the Echo, because I was like, backwards and I kind of thought in terms of the theatre, because Velocity and Giants, now Technicolor, are happening this year in like really big spaces, basically. I was like, oh, theatre's covered for a little while, so I'll just go back to screen for a little bit. It feels like I have a year of writing theatre, then a year of writing film, and then
fine balance,
basically. And then Jessica had... Okay, so I'm going to backtrack again. All of my last few plays have been on main stages.
Okay.
Right. And when I fell in love with theatre and when I got into theatre, it wasn't main stages. It was studios, basically, and small pub theatres and black boxes, and it's the most, I love big theatre, of course I do, but there's just something about the immediacy and the risk-taking that you get in a black box space that I forgot that I loved, because I haven't done a black box play for 6 years or whatever. So Jessica invited me, because we became friends, and she's lovely, and she invited me to the Echo because she was like, oh, there's this theatre, I'm on the board, you should check it out in Atwater Village, it's really cool. So she took me to see a couple of plays there, and I was like, this theatre is really exciting. Like, these guys are doing some really interesting work here. And then she introduced me to Chris, and then he sent me some plays that they'd done, and I was like, fuck, this man takes risks. This man's really exciting. And he's running like a great place here. And then he wanted to read some stuff, and then here we go. So basically what happened with One Jewish Boy was I sent him 2 scripts, basically. And then I got a phone call last October saying, we just did an internal reading of your play and we loved it. And I'm like, what's an internal reading? So he kind of explained the process of how they commission, which is they do an internal reading, then they do a free external invited reading, and then they decide whether or not they're gonna produce it or not. So he did that, and he said, we're going to do a public reading in, it was originally December, but we couldn't make the dates work because it was a little bit too close to the holidays, so we moved it into January. And so we did this public reading. I say they did this public reading. I rocked up to one of the rehearsals, and Sheree and Zeke are playing the characters, and Chris was directing, and they were just, it was really special. The reading was really special, and I haven't looked at this play. I love it, but because there's been some nonsense around it, and also because of all the pandemic stuff, I was just like, it's also caused me a lot of pain, and then the whole thing in Israel happened like a year and a half ago, so it's just like, I just don't want to wade into this argument right now. I've done my bit for the Jewish cause. I just want a quiet life, and anyway, so I was a little bit anxious about maybe a public reading and what might come of it, but my personal philosophy in life is, if there's something I'm scared of or there's something I don't feel great about, the only way I can deal with it is to just lean right into it and come what may, basically, and hopefully it'll be a healing thing. So it's like, they want to do it, fine, let's do it. So we did this reading, and it was really special. It was a really electric night. It was just kind of wonderful. And Zeke and Sheree really embodied these characters in a really beautiful way. And Chris, what I loved about his take on it is that he leant into the love story, and he let the politics in the play just deal with itself. He didn't push the politics. And the last couple of productions were great, but the politics was front and center, Right. And it was just like this really interesting take on it, which I really enjoyed, actually. And it made me fall in love with the characters in the play all over again. And then I knew that he was interested, and I spoke to his partner, and his partner was basically saying that she loved it, and it really resonated with her, and everyone was really nice, and there were a few people who worked at the theatre, etc., etc. So look, I knew that there was a potentially really good chance that these guys would want to do the play, but they'd already sent out the season for this year, basically. So I was like, this isn't, if it happens there at all, it won't be happening until, this December. And a lot of the play happens over Hanukkah. So, Hanukkah's kind of perfect. It's kind of a great alternative holiday play, because that's how it started off life. And then I just got this random phone call while I was in the gym a few weeks ago. And it's like, Chris. Oh, actually, I missed the call. I always miss Chris's calls, and not even on purpose. I just always miss his calls. So I had a shower because I was going to a meeting with the director, and about this other. I did this ad thing a few months ago, and we were just talking about the cut, and so I was in the shower because I was literally about to go to this lunch, and I come out of the shower and I've got 2 or 3 missed calls from Chris. I'm like, why is Chris calling me so many times? What's going on? So I call him. I'm like, hey man, how you doing? And he's like, great. And Chris is always doing 50 things at once. You saw we were on the phone for 30 seconds. He calls me 10 times a day for 30 seconds, right? Which is adorable. And he was literally like, we want to do the play. I'm like, that's amazing. He's like, yeah? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, great, so you can come to the launch on Saturday and we start on Monday. I'm like, what? What? He's like, yeah, flights fell out, so we're going to open the new season with your play.
That's great.
Congrats. He's like, do you want to do it? Thanks, man. And I was like, yeah, but I'm going to Puerto Rico tomorrow.
Of course you are.
And he was like, are you? And I was like, wait, no, I'm not. I'll move that trip.
That's
so awesome. That's kind of how it all happened, basically.
That's funny. 2 final questions.
Okay.
Where can people find your work?
At the Atwater, the Echo Theatre in Atwater Village.
I mean, is any of it published? I will definitely include the ticket link for
Sorry, I was being
smart. Then that's fine.
So, I am not on social media.
That was going to be my final question.
I came off social media 3 years ago, and it was the best thing I've ever done. Although it means that I'm very difficult. It means that I'm really difficult to... Although, actually, I just give people my phone number, which I don't know if I should do that. I'm certainly not doing that on a podcast. There's a website that I have called Adventures in Stenography. So there's like updates on there, and I'm published by Nick Hearn Books. So although they're not here in America, you can buy my plays.
Spell that.
NICKHERN Books. So Nick Hearn Books.
Got it.
And I think they sell like through Amazon. Although I think you can order like my plays from Barnes and Nobles and stuff. They're just not in the stores.
Sure. Okay.
Basically. So there's stuff out there basically.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're not on the socials.
And I'm not on the socials.
Good for you.
It is actually really great.
Oh, I
It's
agree.
really
I
great.
totally agree.
I get so much more done.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
Yeah. And I go to the gym now. Because I'm not doom scrolling.
Here we go. I'm going to say this correctly. Stephen Laughton.
That'll do.
Damn it!
No, that's right. I'm teasing
Okay.
you.
Thanks for coming on to this episode
Thanks
of Playwright
for
Spotlight.
having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget, we're going to be accepting submissions to Play Noir 2025. Deadline will be May 31st. 2025. So you can send your submissions into info@punkmonkeyproductions.com. We will have guidelines updated at www.punkmonkeyproductions.com. And don't forget to pick up your copy of Play Noir Anthology on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.